Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I want to give you guys my final update on this Trinity charge stacking, power charge stacking, Slayer elemental hit of the Spectrum. And oh boy, I really like this build. This is so much fun to play. play. It's actually probably one of the top mappers that I've ever played, and it is even capable of doing all the invitations. I've done the Fear today. I've done my first tier 17 map today, so I finally unlocked my 5th map slot device. So this is something untypical for me. So usually on league start, or at least we are still like I think day 8 of the league or something, usually I buy a carry for the Feared, I buy a carry for the 5th map slot device and stuff like that, and the Void Stones on top of that, right? This league was different. I've done everything by myself. I did my Void Stones with my Bleed Bow Gladiator, and when I moved on to this build now, I did the Feared, and I also did my first T17. All the regular non-Uber Pinnacle bosses. I even did 100%, now actually 200% dailies with this character, and it has been an absolute pleasure to play. There has been lots of upgrades and lots of PUBing on this build, and we haven't even, like, probably the build is on, I would say, like a 30% of the damage that it could technically have if you invest more. And with the invest more, and I'm talking now about probably 500 divines or something, you want to get like a better wand. I decided to drop the Void Battery because a wand like this is probably like a 30 to 40% more damage than the Void Battery, just because of the amount of flat damage. You have to understand power charge, stacking, frenzy charge, endurance charge, brutal charge, the way I build it up with the increased damage per power charge and stuff like that, endurance charge, you know, we have so much percent increased damage, we have so much percent more damage that we need a good amount of flat damage. That's the reason why Early Hit of the Spectrum works so well with this. But adding another ton of like flat damage, but triple damage wand over here, that just outperforms the Void Battery, outperforms a lot of other modifiers like percent increased damage. And this is like the tinkering that I had to do, where I say like, how much percent damage per charge do I need, how much multiplier do I need, because at some point, you know, you can just open PUB and say like, hey, let's disable a 40 crit multi and a 10%, what is actually more DPS, and turned out the multiplier was more DPS in the end. So I bought a new Timeless Jewel, and there's like many ways to optimize that. But, you know, I don't see myself farming another 600-700 divines to min-max this build. I would rather just move on and just play something else, and then keep on doing the same thing as I do every league, where it's just like, you know, creating a build, level it up, gear it, do the content that I plan to do, and then just, yeah, play it for a couple days. And this character, currently level 95, we had actually killed over 300,000 monsters in the clear before some trade messages come. And yes, as I said, it is so much fun to play. But what would be the upgrade, since I talk about like a couple hundred divines extra investment? I do not have a power charge ring. The one that I got from the ritual, I sold to invest into something like a Supreme Vision, for example. That was like more power gain for the divine spend. The last upgrade would actually be power charge ring with the essence with frenzy. I need a curse, additional curse, Badge of the Brotherhood, that would save me another 4 skill points, which would end up probably even more damage just because of the crit multi-nodes over here. We are now spell suppression capped, we are ailment immune. What else would there be that would be nice? As I said, like a high level, or at least like a better crafted one, probably through the league mechanic crafting, like a 6x T1 crit multi attack speed kind of thing. I do not have a Forbidden Flame Flesh yet. That will be the what is it, the Arena Challenger charges to give this build even more speed and more damage. And it is actually crazy what the scaling of this build could technically be. And as I said, for the stuff that I've done now, it has been an absolute joy to play this build. I would say let's run a map showcase, and then we talk about more in-depth about the PUB and things you can do with it and stuff like that. Do we have another? Yeah, let's just do like my standard farm that I currently do, which is a ritual daily kind of thing. So let me quickly get 2 of these now, and 2 of the daily thingy. Daily. So this is basically the Atlas passive strategy that I linked before, which is basically a cemetery with a ritual daily kind of like tree. And now since I got the 5th map slot device, I can now run double ritual and double daily rewards. And I gotta say, the daily rewards are actually quite interesting, because, and not the ritual ones, because not only did I get the power charge ring, I also got like a claw with the physical, the fire damage per strength and stuff like that, a couple of divines left and right. So Yeah, so what did change on the build? So basically I put away the returning proc, because everything pretty much dies in a one hit and the returning projectiles didn't do a lot, and I felt like with GMP it just feels like a lot better to clear. I still like chain more, and I still run the wisps because I think the wisps are like both. They are like a clearing enhancing tool, and they're also helping for single target, which is super nice to do. And but with the returning projectiles, I have no idea how to calculate that. Like, if you would go for uber bosses, which I'm pretty sure this build can do, but I'm just too yeah, I just don't see myself spending, like, I don't know, 5 divines for an uber boss just to test it, you know. That's why I also didn't put in any intelligence tattoos for the chaos resistance, because in the end of the day, why, if you know that you're done with the build pretty much and you want to go on to the next, like, why spend another 5 divines or 6 divines for additional chaos resistance on your tree, because that currency is kind of gone when you play and level up a new character, right? But as you see, with the wisp, with the chain, with the GMP, with all these kind of things, the clearing is so good. And we have an automated berserk with the Chaos Spirit gloves, with the life regen that we get from the replica restless ward and stuff like that. The synergy in this build is just so freaking good, and is yeah, I can just recommend playing a build like that. I think it actually got cheaper to start now, just because the Ralakesh Impatience boots dropped quite hard in the price. So did a bunch of other things. So realistically, and I'm saying about a build that can map tier 16, you know, the more gear you add, the better it gets, especially once you start adding the power charge things, right? But realistically, for getting or for setting this character up to farm tier 16 maps and then grind your way up to like the GG items, I think like a 20 divines should technically be enough, because I didn't have more either. And that was when the Ralakesh boots were already like 18 divines or something, right? So to get this build going, all you need is the Ralakesh Impatience boots, the Badge of the Brotherhood, and you need to be a Slayer for the what is the Masterful Form node, right? But other than that, the rest, you know, sky's the limit, and you could easily spend like 10 mirrors in this. And I would like, I'm wondering, I think, at least I have not seen any alley hit build that is stronger than what I'm playing here. Because not only does this character have like a lot of damage and was able to do a tier 17 map, I also did 100% deli. It is tanky, it is fast, you know, it has like way higher like ceiling, in my opinion, than the a typical Deadeye build. Because I feel like these ranger builds, they're just super squishy, you know. And this build with like an automated steel skin, with the berserk, with the less damage taken, you know, the 11 permanent endurance charges that I have for the physical damage mitigation, it just feels very good to play. And I don't know if I ever had a mapping character that was able to do 100% daily without Headhunter, right? No Mage Blood, no Headhunter, no nothing of that. Just an ethical, well-rounded beast character. And I think the map is pretty much clear right now. We have 2 monsters remaining. We got here another memory. I'm gonna loot this later on. So let's stop the daily. Let's see the rewards over here. And they just bulk up, you know, all these like daily orbs and stuff like that. We get 72 simulacrum splinters. Bunch of beautiful loot here. Not saying that this is any specific crazy good loot, but you know, it just sums up. And when you start selling your daily orbs in bulk and your simulacrums and stuff like that, it quickly ramps up. Let's see if we get something into the ritual. Doesn't seem like Chinsol. Activate here my out of war cry. That's the first thing I do when I leave a map, is just like deactivate that. Cloak of Defiance is couple chaos. The thing though is, I don't like to pick items like that from the ritual, because I want to reroll and see if I get something crazy good, you know, like synthesized items, maybe an apothecary card, some nice synth base, a nice fracture and stuff like that. So that's why I usually just move on. And when I'm on the last side, like here, I cannot reroll anymore, then I usually just take whatever I think might be worth it or not worth it, and yeah, pretty much, and then move on. So this is basically how I do it. Good. As I said, what were the key takeaways if we take a look at the path of building? So this is what I currently have. I finally managed to get like a Megalomaniac with Enduring Composure and Storm Drinker. Storm Drinker, I think, is one of the very few ways where you can get Energy Shield Leech as an attack-based build, you know? the pen and so on, like whatever, but the lightning damage leached as energy shield is the core part. So now not only do I have life gain on hit from my Watcher's Eye, so from the discipline mod, I also can now leech the energy shield. So this is like, it sounds a bit low with 2.8k life and 900 ES, so it's not really a lot of EHP, but as I said, was able to do 100% daily, was able to do a T17 map, I was able to do the Fear Deathless, so, you know, it's not like a build that you can just face tank everything, but it definitely has enough like EHP and recovery to get through a lot of these kind of things. So let's talk about the brutal charge sustain. Brutal charges, or endurance charges in that case, are very hard to sustain just because there is no endurance charge on hit. There is one for stun, but as a wonder you're not gonna stun. But the thing is though, I built in an automaton with the with enduring cry, which helps sustaining. So this is just like automatically going off basically, right? So every time this enduring cry hits monsters, you're gonna get the charges. Then we have a shield charge with endurance charge on melee stun. So when you're traveling around and shield charge, your shield charge can also give you endurance charges, or in that case brutal charges, thanks to the belt. Another thing that we have is I have now just a one link Forbidden Rite. What I do here is I just use it one time, I hit myself, and now you see that the endurance charges are going up thanks to the enduring composure. Gain 1 endurance charge every second you've been hit recently. And while you're mapping, since we don't have a lot of evasion or anything like that, we get hit quite often, but we just have a lot of damage reduction, right? But every time we get hit, this enduring composure goes off and just permanently sustains our triple charges, basically the brutal charge. And for bossing, as I said, one time hitting your boss with a shield charge or with the enduring cry and anything like that, or just get hit by something, you're just sustaining that thing. And I think this was like a very good solution to that. Then what else did I change? Yeah, this is something with the Timeless Jewel, right? And here I want to say that specifically there is many ways that you can do that, right? For example, the one that I had before was a massive thread of hope. Let me quickly put that in to just show you how this is done, right? So we put in here a massive thread of hope. This would basically give you those two nodes, right? And if you go further, you could take this jewel slot over here and put in an intuitive leap. So we can basically take these two nodes over here. And this is better, this is like the better pathing, just because you get the all resistance over here, and these like increased duration and stuff like that is not really necessary. So we have like the supreme, impossible escape, so we can allocate all these nodes without being connected to them, same as the intuitive leap. And now with the brutal charge, you see how many nodes we can actually get through here, right? And all you do now is find Timeless Jewel. You're gonna pick the Elegant Hubris. You want to have Caspiro, so we're gonna remove all the stat requirements, because it's rough to get enough strength and enough intelligence for all these kind of things, right? And the mods that you want to look for is the damage. Let's type in charge. It should give you the increased damage per frenzy charge. Then we have the increased damage per power charge, and then we have the increased damage per endurance charge. They are all equal. Then you can put in something like critical strike multiplier. You press filter nodes. That means it will only apply to the stuff that you have currently allocated in PUB, right? And here you have one that is not really that good. Wait, something, no, not acrobatics. We're gonna pick the conduit. There we go, surge. This looks a lot better. So this one would have 5 times % damage and 1 time multiplier. This one has 5 times % damage, 1% multiplier. This one has 5 times damage, 1 multiplier. This one has 4 times damage and 1 multiplier. This one, you know, there is so many very good ones. And once you have that, you're just gonna, because you always have to check if they are available, right? So if I go find Timeless Jewel, I click here on copy trade URL, right? And what I do usually is I need to check what is on the market. This one, 1 divine, 1.5 divines, 3 divines. They are definitely affordable. But what do I do? Because thinking about I have the best one in PUB, but it doesn't exist and nobody has it, neither on or offline, doesn't do anything, right? You can put them on live search, but if they ever come up, I don't know. But now I could say, hey, this one, 79,200 is 1 divine, so let me quickly check. I go in my list here, 79,200 is this one over here. I double click it, it adds it in PUB, then I can click on that, And now I can check the notes, okay? Increased mana regen, I don't need that, so I can save the skill point. Multiplier, really good. Fist damage is useless. Damage per power charge. Evasion rating per frenzy could be nice. Then we have another damage per power charge. Here is damage per endurance charge. This is 80% increased armor. We don't really have too much armor. Then we have here damage per power charge and increased spell damage. So, and here we have another flask effect duration, and here we have critical strike chance. So this is like, for one divine, you get like an insane elegant hubris, right? And this is super easy. And for example, if you don't, if those two notes are trash, you just remove your you just remove those points. You don't have to worry about that, right? If those two notes are trash, you can remove those as well. And the way I did it in the end, I wanted to spend the least amount of points, so I don't have either of those, and that's why I only have like 2 times % damage and like 2 times multiplier. But one thing that I added here is mine has chance to avoid being shocked, and as we know, chance to avoid being shocked can be converted into ailment immunity thanks to a Storm Shroud. So I thought like, this layer of defense is something I just don't want to pass out, right? But you can definitely just go ahead and just say like, hey, what else should there be? Chance to avoid. Avoid being chilled, avoid being shocked. And now you just check one that has 1 time, like this one. Double damage, 1 time multi, 1 time avoid being shocked. You know, like, there is like plenty of those on the market, and I just hate it when I see in the comments, yo, he's got a timeless jewel that costs 500 divines or 25 mirrors or something. It's one of a kind, and if you don't have that, it's unplayable, right? And every time I check for timeless jewel, I always buy them for 1 or 2 divines, and they are not like the omega giga best in slot. They're just like insanely strong, and I get them for 1 divine, you know? So don't worry about that. You just make yourself a favor and just check them manually, and you're gonna find a really strong one for 1 divine, and that's about it, right? So what else do we have here? Secrets of Suffering, still the same. I would definitely recommend getting an Enduring Composure as a small cluster jewel if there is no Megalomaniac, and one with a Storm Drinker if there is a Megalomaniac, because like Storm Drinker, there is so many cool notes. They're like chance to deal double damage, increase critical strike chance, some ally damage, maybe Sublime Vision, not Sublime Vision, the where you get spell suppression and ailment avoidance, and all these kind of things, you know. And there's even like ailment avoidance on one of these small notes over here, right? Good. Tattoos. This is something I added slightly. So I added a bunch of like global accuracy and spell suppression to get me capped. But I still have like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 10 or more dexterity notes that I could use for anything that I want. And I can use all these int notes over here. It's like 14 in total for chaos resistance, for anything that you like. As I said, I did not go the way because I knew, okay, today is the last day of the build and I'm gonna level up a new character. So I did not want to spend 4 or 5 divines for tattoos if I don't plan to play this build for any longer, right? Good. The wand we set, rings we set, anything that caps your resistance, life, accuracy. I think this one was actually very good. That's why I even bought a Calandra's Touch to mirror them. But thing is, you know, a power charge ring with the essence with frenzy flat is just insane. Crown of Ice is still the best in helm slot, the best in slot helmet. I PUB'd with like a very insane double power charge helmet with all kinds of modifier, and it's still like a fraction of the damage that the Crown of Ice gives, just because we have so much spell damage that we get from the Crown of Ice. And yeah, there is just no way around it. You can, as I said, take the increase in reductions to spell damage. Is like 100% multiplier. Here is 150%, but it also gives you life leech, mana leech, you know, accuracy, all the good stuff. Relicash Impatience we said in the previous video. Ally Weakness, double curse, as I said, curse corruption on the Badge of the Brotherhood would be insane. There is even better combinations than what I have here. And yeah, we're spell suppression capped, we're element avoidance. I think I described everything. If you want to know anything more, if I can help you, then please let me know in the comments. MTX doesn't really matter too much because this is like a legacy set, but before that I was using the RBG set. What is it? Screw it, I always forget the name of it. Transcendence? Yeah, the Transcendence set, which is like the RBG set that I had in the previous videos. Good. Damage. Damage is something I have a hard time calculating, right? So there is a lot of like support gems that do work. In my single target setup, I use barrage support and ally damage, right? I think Sacred Wisp could be there anywhere. There is still the option of returning projectiles, and like the wisps and the returning projectiles do not get calculated over here. So what I did is I added a 50% more damage multiplier for the Sacred Wisps. I think this is correct, might be not. There's also the way where you can like get like 40% more damage with the returning proj, but then there is the tornado, and projectiles can like explode on a tornado and hit the boss, and there is I don't even care. I know what I've done with the build, and it doesn't really matter to me what it says on the DPS. I think with a min-maxed version you could probably get about 200 million DPS is what I can see this build if you have like really good gear, and if all the calculations with the wisp and the returning projectiles and the tornado and the explosions and chain and pierce and I don't know what else works, and it's probably even more DPS than that, which is an insanely fast mapper, super fast, tanky, dual leech, blah blah blah, all the good stuff, and it can do uber bosses on top of that. I think that's kind of a statement. Yeah, I think that is pretty much it with the build. I don't know what else to say about it. I explained how this entire build works in the first video. Yeah, and yeah, that's it. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.
Four months ago, this video was released. Ever since then, every single day, people have asked me to watch it. And I figured, you know what? Let's cozy up, let's get comfy, and let's take a look inside Pandora's box of World of Warcraft. The following video contains subjects and footage that some viewers may find disturbing. All information contained within has been made publicly available by the people or entities discussed. Viewer discretion is advised. Those are the good days, boys. 14-inch televisions. Yeah. I had one of those.
Sure, but the question is, does the international addiction to an internet game represent a danger? Maybe, but there is also no indication that anything can slow the explosive growth of the intoxicating game called World of Warcraft.
Yep. That's how you knew it was a good game. Fox News doing documentaries.
What the fuck was that shit? And by the way, you don't want that to do that either. You think you do,
but you don't. Yup. Dude, I love the 90s fucking intro, man.
You guys really take care of it. Oh, I game cubes all day, every day.
Oh shit. My man, that guy's a gladiator.
Incredible 16 hours a day. His mother says his personality has changed and that he's become moody and violent.
Fuck
and his
yeah.
addiction is tearing the family apart.
Fuck yeah.
But our actions are going to matter more than any of these.
That's right. They sure did matter, didn't they?
All right, yo, bro. Ready, guys? Let's do this.
Damn, that was some good shit. Bro, what a fucking intro. Holy shit.
The power level where...
Bro, I watched this on that monitor.
And they get all the great
at Jeff's
experience.
house. Oh my god. Fuck yeah, dude. This is so good. Holy shit. There it is. The good times, the best times.
In the world of MMORPGs, you'll scarcely find anyone who hasn't heard of, if not played, the World of Warcraft. Released in 2004, it would quickly begin to make a name for itself, garnering worldwide praise for its innovation, accessibility, and the closeness to the community by its developer, Blizzard Entertainment. Both celebrated and condemned for its addictiveness, in the span of a few short months, it would not only become the most popular of the MMORPG genre, but also set the standard for all of those that would follow in its footsteps. Many would try, and over the course of 15 years, few would gain even a fraction of the player base of the seemingly unstoppable giant. Today, though, a much different...
People forget how big WoW was. Like, WoW was like, it was the game. It was the game people were talking about. It was like Fortnite in 2018 for 3 years. Probably longer than that, like 5 or 6 years. It was massive. It was the fucking game.
Different picture is painted. What was initially considered inspirational in the world of game development now leaves behind a controversial history marred with what many describe as betrayal, deception, and squandered potential, leaving many asking the question, how? A snapshot of history of a world created within a world, a microcosm of mayhem, a virtual playground for humanity to show each other their best and their worst.
Yeah.
This is the story of Blizzard Entertainment and their iconic MMORPG, the World of Warcraft.
Damn. As I said, I really cannot emphasize enough how different the whole world was like back then. It was just so different. It was so crazy. Like this, yep, Y2K. Yep, listen to this.
At the dawn of the new millennium, the online world was growing rapidly. The intellect of man and the advancements of technology combined bestowed upon the world the creation of the internet by Al Gore. News of a new Star Wars movie was spreading. The storyboard for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring had been completed. Nerd culture was about to reach critical mass. And Bill Clinton did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Imagine that.
So entered the massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG for short. The creation of the first MMO can be traced all the way back to the 70s, depending on your definition and standards, as they would be text-based, though they had existed for decades.
Bro, straight up, my mom played those text-based games in the 70s. Like, real shit, she actually played those all the way back then.
It was only near the new millennia that they would attract a sizable player base.
I actually found her notebook of all of her notes and maps that she had made. Maybe like a couple of years ago, I showed it to her. And she's like, yep, that's right. I'll have to show you guys sometime.
Although varying in implementation, they all shared the central idea of an online, persistent world to be shared with players from all over the globe. A genre unique in the sense that there is no planned end, no credits rolled, nor thanks for playing. Game content would be added as long as there are players playing, and the journey would only end when the player decided that it was over.
It never
a concept
stops.
That was remarkably foreign to many at the time. In these early years, many would try their hand in breaking through the genre, and overall, it would contain a niche audience. Some were beginning to make a name for themselves though, such as Origin Systems' leap into the online persistent world with Ultima Online, an isometric fantasy game memorable for its PvP combat in particular. Mythic Entertainment, who would later develop Warhammer Online, took their shot with the Dark Age of Camelot, a third-person take on Arthurian lore mixed with Norse mythology and high fantasy. Star Wars would make their debut into the world of MMOs with the 2003 release, The Star Wars Galaxies, an MMO with a more heavy focus on community and sandbox gameplay.
You know what's really kind of funny about it is it's almost like it is now, where every company is trying to go towards a metaverse, but back then they actually were, and Blizzard succeeded. Blizzard was the one whose metaverse effectively won out over everybody else.
And most prolific at the time was EverQuest in 1999 by Verant Interactive and 99 Studios, decrowning the previously reigning champion, Ultima Online. Just 24 hours after launch, it would quickly become the most subscribed MMORPG at
I thought Ultima Online looked better personally. I like the aesthetics of Ultima Online more.
10,000 subscribers. Yeah, really. 10,000 was the most subscribed MMORPG at the time. It would eventually peak at over 500,000 years after its launch.
Holy
but
shit,
as
I didn't know
history has
that.
shown, this would yet be a fraction of the potential that was hidden within the genre.
Wow.
A potential that had yet to be realized.
That's a lot.
The MMO was on the rise, and the time to strike was nigh, and in the background, a beast was stirring, silently observing the strengths, the weaknesses, the success.
You have to understand, like, back then, Blizzard only made the best games. Like, you might not understand that now, right? But it's so different. Like, Blizzard was the From Software of the 90s and the 2000s. Like, they brought out a game, and it's like World of Warcraft was as far ahead of its, like, other competitors as, like, Elden Ring is farther ahead of any other game. Like, it was just so far ahead, it just wasn't even... It just put every other game in the fucking dirt.
Successes and the failures of the then relatively unexplored genre. Blizzard at this point already had established themselves as innovators with their Diablo, StarCraft, and Warcraft series, the latter being a real-time strategy game set in a fantasy world of orcs,
I played this shit all the time.
magic, and adventure. And having seen the success of other fantasy-based games such as EverQuest, the table was set. After halting development on an abandoned project, a small team of developers were left in...
That's Metzen right there. That right there is fucking Metzen.
limbo and were searching for inspiration on their next game. They had the IP, they had the funding, and most importantly, the timing.
The boys, all the boys.
September 2nd, 2001. Long before Blizzard was big enough to hold their own convention, they held a panel at London's European Computer Trade Show, and it was then that the public for the first time saw the world of Warcraft.
Yep. It just looks so much better than all the other old games. Like, it was just so far above, like, holy shit. Look at that.
They made it clear this was not the sequel to the popular RTS series at the time, but rather something completely different. Players would transition from controlling pre-made heroes and progressing through a campaign to creating their own heroes and making their own stories. The game would be multiplayer on a...
Well, they kind of had this actually in Warcraft 3. Do you guys remember that in the Frozen Throne? You had like that campaign for Rexxar, and like Rexxar was just by himself, and you would just like send him around on different missions and shit. And I remember whenever World of Warcraft came out, and I was like, well, what kind of game is this? And like Zach told me, he's like, yo, it's like, remember back like the Rexxar campaign in Warcraft 3? I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, but that's like the whole game. I'm like, oh, it's so badass. Like, that's what it was. Yeah, Founding of Durotar. I don't remember what it was called, but yeah, that was the that was the first foray into it that they made.
Massive skill, bringing together fans of not only the Warcraft series, but of MMOs as a whole. The reaction, however, was mixed. Some waited with eager anticipation, trying to imagine their beloved series making its leap into the massively multiplayer setting, and many were upset at the abrupt change of focus, preferring Blizzard to concentrate on what was...
I just want you guys to see this, just so you can know that there's nothing that has ever changed. Okay? It doesn't matter. Like, he knew he was 20 years ahead of his time. That, yeah, it's always the way that's been.
On what was proven to work, instead of taking a gamble into unfettered territory. The idea of paying a monthly fee to continue playing was a hard pill to swallow at the time.
It was, bro. Like, I'm telling you, $15 a month, man. Like, $15 a month is like $25 or $30 a month nowadays. Like, $15, like, I would get allowance of like maybe 20 or 25. I don't remember exactly what it was. And like, it still is, but bro, like back then it was even more. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, it was even more. Yeah, It's like $49. It's a lot of fucking money to play the game back then. It really was. Like, that's why I didn't. How do I report a GM?
Especially by Blizzard fans who had grown accustomed to the one-time purchase models set standard by the company. Work would continue on the project, however, and the very first interview would be claimed by the Computer Gaming World magazine. By this time, EverQuest was the clear reigning champion, but the genre as a whole had one fatal flaw, and that's the learning curve. XP loss, gear loss, and even permanent character death were commonplace in nearly every game of the genre. And
that's right, because fuck that. I don't want to be this guy, alright? Like, I want to be able to play the game and relax, you know? Yeah, you get your shit fucked up. And, like, this is what I said before, right? Remember I was bringing up how every game was trying to be the last big game? World of Warcraft tried to be the next big game. And that's why it was so successful. Is they did away with the shackles that the previous games gave the players.
Combined with a large time investment in playing, it cultivated a very niche and hardcore community, and the everyday casual player would quickly succumb to the intense difficulty and seek entertainment from other, more forgiving games. It was a genre with a focus on character progression, with death penalties centering around character regression and a steep learning curve to go along with it. However, this transitionary period would prove to be a key moment where players for the first time would leave single-player games that looked like this into this online sprawling world. They were incomparable to each other, and although it's funny to think now, it was an intimidating thing. The time investment was, and still is, incredibly high. You had to have...
Oh yeah, there were so many, because there were also all these news stories. Like, I remember I started playing the game in, like, 2006, and, like, my relatives were like, they're like, do you know, like, so you let him play World of Warcraft? Well, I have a friend at work, and her son started playing World of Warcraft, and next thing she knows, he's smoking the reefer. And my dad would be like, yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah, that's my son, you know? He'd have been totally fine with that, right? But just in general, he didn't give a fuck. He was like, whatever.
A computer, 15? You had to have a good enough graphics card to run it, you had to have internet, and you had to pay a subscription. The amount of hurdles standing between the average person and the game were already high, and combined with the unforgiving gameplay of the landmark titles representing the genre, it was just too much for the average person. But it was this person, this untapped market of new and casual players that Blizzard would set their sights on. World of Warcraft took a
like the same thing Final Fantasy did 10 years later.
Completely different style of approach. During a time when XP loss was the bare minimum penalty for dying, World of Warcraft made you simply run back to your corpse.
One of the great things here is that when you die, and death is an inevitability in all these games, it's really not that big of a deal. All other online RPGs make death a really bad thing because dying should be bad, right? Well, in World of Warcraft, pretty much all that happens is you sit out for a bit. You respawn back at a graveyard, and you run and get your corpse, and you respawn. You don't lose experience points. You don't lose your items or any of that stuff.
Forge your own
path. The next
path.
level took years in other games. World of Warcraft, it took months for most players. And when systems were complicated and confusing, requiring external literature to understand, World of Warcraft systems were relatively straightforward, and when character stat and template choices were often permanent, World of Warcraft featured costly but reversible methods of character progression and...
Yeah, you have to remember, 50 gold respecs back in the culture of 2004 was an easy respec. That's like, oh, you can just go and do whatever you want. Yeah, that was an easy fucking respec, because you have to remember, like, all of the games, like, basically, like, culture around, like, Dungeons and Dragons, right, was influenced primarily by Tolkien, obviously. But, like, every bit of, like, fantasy gaming for, like, a very, very long time, and, like, you could argue still now, was derivative of the original Dungeons and Dragons. That's why you have dice rolls for critical hits, and you see that DNA in, like, every fucking fantasy game. And like, back in Dungeons and Dragons, it was harder to respec as well, especially in the earlier versions. That's my understanding.
Customization, In other games, you had areas designed for large groups of high-level players, referred to as raids, but they were commonly out in the open world, which resulted in having to compete against one another for kill credit. Due to this, there was a greater sense of urgency to complete the raid in its entirety in one sitting before any other guild had the chance to catch up and bring unwanted competition. Marathon sessions of guilds setting up 24-hour shifts was a common strategy to maintain dominion of these raids, in many cases to the detriment of the health of the players. This Final Fantasy XI boss was engaged for 18 hours until players were forced to quit after they began to faint and vomit. Though this boss in particular...
But guys, he was at 10%. Just keep going. It's only 2 more hours. Yeah, come on. You're almost there. Remember that? Yeah, that's how serious this game used to be. Like, people back in the day were ridiculous at these games. It was nuts.
Was nerfed shortly after the incident. This was the state of the endgame for most MMOs in these early stages. However, World of Warcraft had been one of the first MMOs to standardize instanced raids, where players and guilds could create their own unique raid instances, resetting on a weekly basis. And as for the raid bosses themselves, although today seen as archaic and simplistic, at the time they were quite advanced. In a genre...
Oh, it's like you look at this thing. What is this? What is this? The triangle dragon? The Lord of Geometry? Like, what the fuck does this... What the fuck does this do? You know what I mean? Like, this is the Lord of Geometry. Like, of course not. Like, what the fuck? And so, like, whenever WoW came out and, like, it had instances, it sounds really cool to have these outdoor raids until you have the outdoor raids. And then you realize how fucking annoying it is. That being said, we did have a lot of fun in Classic WoW doing the world bosses. It was fun. Having a little bit of it is okay. I hope they have that in Ashes of Creation.
Where raid bosses boiled down to having a unique name with a higher health pool and increased damage. World of Warcraft would add unique, and often at the time, complex mechanics that required teamwork and thought to overcome, which in turn would become one of the game's major selling points. The worlds had NPCs, but were commonly static, whereas the world of Azeroth felt more alive with dynamic NPCs going about their daily lives. Simply put, what it didn't invent, it improved. MMO.
And that's the thing, is like, yeah, back then there were just characters that just sat around. Like, so many of the things that you take for granted now, like, for example, like in New World, there's no loading screens whenever you're running around in New World. World of Warcraft was the first MMO, really, or first big MMO I know, to just not really have loading screens. You just go from one zone to another zone. That, just like that simplistic thing that, like, everybody takes for granted now was gigantic back then. It was huge.
Were in a constant state of almost theirs, and World of Warcraft was the first one to bridge that gap and bring it into a more mainstream audience, and it reaped the rewards because of that. The game would continue development throughout the years, with teasers being released in the form of magazine interviews and trailers, keeping the curious onlooker abreast on its direction. And after a long alpha and beta testing period, the moment of truth came on November 23rd, 2004.
Yep. Oh man, guys, I can't believe that these new games can't keep these servers up. It wasn't like this back in the day. I tell you something, back in the day they used to run a whole lot better. Yeah. Ain't shit changed. Yeah, it was worse. Because back then,
appealing to the casual gamer worked well.
Back then, the developers didn't care. Like, now they hire a PR person or a community manager to pretend like they care about you. Back then, the developers were like, fuck, really messed this one up, huh? Oh, we'll fix it eventually. I'm gonna go to lunch. Yeah, like, I didn't even give a fuck.
Too well. Blizzard in no way was prepared for the frenzy of players eager to get into the world. Disconnects, lag, and rollbacks would persist heavily for the opening months, and still consistently through the next couple of years. Forums daily would be filled with outrage, demands for a refund, and even threats of lawsuits. The miraculous thing about it, though, is that
Nothing
it didn't even
changed.
seem to slow its growth. The launch today is looked at as disastrous, and yet still...
Nobody cares about a bad launch. Literally nobody gives a shit. They will come back and play the game later on if it's good. That's why I tell people, it's like every launch is going to be shit. Why is it going to be shit? Because it doesn't really matter. Look at this, RAM or video card? Yes, this was a real question back in the day. This was back in the Stone Ages. Like, people had to connect. There was like an aqueduct with water, and you had to connect that to the stone cutting device, and then the stone cutting device's kinetic energy would power the hamster wheel that would cause the computer to turn on. And that's what it was.
People came back again and again. How can a game that's playable maybe 50% of the time hold such a demand? Well, it's because it was that good.
It was good.
Years of development had paid off, as World of Warcraft quickly became a hit, almost immediately dwarfing all competition at the time
Beat
and
their
robbing
ass.
them of their player bases. It was the vampire of the MMO industry at its release, and it would suck the life force out of every single previously mentioned staple of the genre.
But there was one unfortunate thing. The unfortunate thing was it launched right when WoW launched.
Yep.
So WoW brought the whole industry down, not just us. Every online game out there went down as soon as WoW went out. WoW was like a huge succubus of players went over there and drove into WoW.
Yep.
And it drove all our numbers down.
60 levels of progression and a world of challenges.
To
Hey guys, Mikoshi here. Yeah, capacity to do so.
you.